Aita, drama, secrets, confessions. Welcome to Tale Trove Reddit.
That day, the entire courtroom was so silent I could hear my own heartbeat. No one believed that a child like me would dare to stand up against an entire police force. But I knew, if I didn't speak, the truth would be buried forever. Dozens of eyes were fixed on me. Some waited for me to collapse, some hoped I would stay silent, and some just wanted me to disappear. I trembled, my hands ice cold, but my mouth still spoke a sentence that left the whole courtroom frozen. I know what the police did that night. At that very moment, the air exploded. The lawyer dropped his pen. The judge was stunned, and those who thought they were safe began to panic. You will never believe what happened next. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss this shocking truth. The whole story began on what seemed like an ordinary night. But that very night changed my life forever. They called it an accident, but I knew it was no accident. Do you believe that a single moment could turn you into the only witness of a horrifying crime? I was just a child. No one took me seriously. But fate, in its cruel twist, pushed me into the middle of a battle between justice and darkness. And my enemies were the very people society praised as heroes. That day, the courtroom was packed. Reporters crowded in, cameras flashing non-stop. Every eye was fixed on the witness stand, where I sat with my heart pounding out of control. Have you ever sat in a room full of hundreds of people, yet felt like the entire world had isolated you? Across from me sat the police officers in uniform, bold and unshaken as if they had never done anything wrong. They smiled, shook hands with the lawyer, and stared at me with cold eyes that looked ready to devour me. Everyone believed they were the good guys, the protectors of justice. But what if I told you they were the most dangerous liars of all? I saw my mother sitting in the back row, her eyes red with tears. She only wanted me to stay silent, but I knew the truth couldn't wait another day. What would you do if the truth you carried could shatter the image of the so-called national heroes? The tension in the courtroom was suffocating. I could hear the clicking of cameras, the furious tapping of keyboards. Someone whispered, "That boy will never dare to speak." They were wrong. Because I had seen. I had heard. And I knew something no one else in that room wanted to hear. Would you dare believe that the testimony of a child could make an entire system tremble? I know what you're wondering. Who am I in the story? The truth is, I'm just a 13-year-old kid, so ordinary that no one ever bothered to notice me. I like to draw, I like to play games, and I never thought there would come a day when I'd sit in a courtroom, facing the most powerful people in the city. Do you think a kid like me could shake an entire system? My mom is a single mother. She worked 2 jobs a day just to raise me. Every time I looked at her rough, calloused hands, I told myself I had to be strong. But when she found out I planned to testify in court, she cried and begged me not to get involved. If it were you, would you have the courage to go against the person who sacrificed their whole life for you? And then there were others. People I never imagined I would have to face. The police. To everyone else, they were heroes, the proud men in blue uniforms. But to me, they were the ones willing to trample over the lives of the innocent. Can you believe it? The very people praised in the newspapers were the ones who stole my childhood innocence. I still remember one officer putting his hand on my shoulder, flashing me a fake smile, and saying, "We just want to protect you." But his eyes were like a blade, cutting straight through me. I knew that if I spoke, they would never forgive me. Would you dare to stand against the very people who could throw you in jail at any moment? This story isn't just about me. It's about my mother, about justice, and about a society that chose to look the other way. And if you've listened this far, I have to ask you, whose side are you on? The side of a kid brave enough to tell the truth? Or the side of those who wear the uniform of heroes but hide the darkness within? On the day of the trial, the sky was gray, as if warning of a coming storm. I stepped out of the car, my legs trembling like they wanted to glue themselves to the ground. In front of the courthouse, dozens of reporters shoved their way forward, microphones and cameras pointed straight at me. Have you ever felt like the whole world was watching your every tiny movement? The crowd roared. Some shouted in support, others booed, even cursed at me. They called me a liar, a disgrace to the honor of the police. But there were also eyes filled with hope, silently urging me to speak the words everyone else was too afraid to say. If it were you, would you listen to the angry voices of the crowd, or to the faint whisper of your own heart? Inside the courthouse, the air was even heavier. I saw rows of lawyers in crisp suits, their faces cold as ice. Each one looked at me as if they had already mapped out every step to crush me. The police sat calmly, laughing and chatting as if they were in a cafe. Doesn't it terrify you when the accused seem calmer than the ones fighting for justice? My mother sat in the back, clutching her handkerchief so tightly it was about to tear. Her eyes flashed with desperation, as if she wanted to scream, "Son, please don't do this." But I knew I couldn't turn back. The truth had weighed on me every single day, every sleepless night. Have you ever kept a secret so heavy it felt like you couldn't breathe? The room grew silent. The sound of the judge's footsteps echoed, each one like thunder pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and told myself, if not today, then never. And at that moment, I understood. My real battle was only just beginning. Do you think I could win a fight this impossible? The sound of the judge's gavel echoed, rattling through every corner of the massive courtroom. Everyone went silent. The air itself seemed frozen in place. I sat there, my palms soaked in sweat, my heart pounding so fast I was afraid everyone else could hear it. Have you ever been in a situation where just one word from you could decide the fate of dozens of people? The police attorney stood up first. His words were smooth, sharp, and commanding as he declared that the heroes in uniform were completely innocent. He insisted I was just a child, easily influenced, confused in memory, my words worthless. The room nodded along, and I felt countless eyes of doubt burning into me. How would you feel if an entire crowd dismissed you and belittled your voice right to your face? Then it was my lawyer's turn. A thin man, not loud at all, but his gaze was unwavering. He simply said, "The truth doesn't need embellishment, it only needs to be heard." That single line was like a spark in my chest, giving me just enough courage to raise my head again. Do you believe one sentence could revive hope in the middle of despair? When the judge motioned for me to prepare, the courtroom buzzed again. Some people smirked, some leaned in with sharp attention, while the police remained disturbingly calm. Their eyes locked on me as if saying, "If you dare to speak, your life is over." Would you still stand up for the truth knowing it could cost you your entire future? In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. I had to say everything, no matter how brutal the consequences might be. And just as I drew a deep breath, ready to speak, something happened that shook the entire courtroom. Do you want to know what happened the second I began my testimony? Don't forget to hit subscribe so you can follow me to the very end of this shocking truth. I stepped up to the witness stand, my legs heavy as if weighed down by stone. The courtroom light shone directly on my face, making me feel the weight of every pair of eyes locked on me. Some looked at me with pity, some with doubt, and others were so cold they made my skin crawl. Have you ever felt like nothing more than prey surrounded by a pack of predators? The judge asked the first questions. I answered with a trembling voice, my words scattered, like I was just a scared little boy who knew nothing. The entire room sighed, head shaking, convinced I had nothing important to say. Do you think they were wrong to underestimate me so badly? Suddenly, I stopped. I lifted my head and stared straight at the row of police officers in front of me. In that instant, all my fear seemed to vanish. And I spoke, clear and firm, a sentence that froze the entire courtroom. I know what really happened that night. Whispers broke out. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed nonstop. My mother clutched her chest as if afraid her heart might give out. The police attorney frowned, while the men in uniform suddenly shifted, their faces changing in an instant. Have you ever been in a room so quiet you could hear someone swallow? I began recounting every detail of what I had seen. The screams, the heavy footsteps, and then the horrifying act no one dared believe. I described it with such certainty that no one dared to interrupt me. Do you believe a child could make an entire courtroom tremble with just a few words? I looked around and saw faces drained of color. Some even sat there with mouths open, refusing to believe what they'd just heard. But I knew. This was only the beginning of the nightmare the truth was about to unleash. Do you dare to hear the rest of what I'm about to reveal? I took a deep breath, then began to speak. No more hesitant answers. The words poured out of me, like a secret I had kept locked away for too long, finally breaking free. Have you ever noticed how, when you speak the truth, your voice suddenly sounds stronger than ever? I told them about that night. When everyone thought the police had come to save us, I saw them do the opposite. They didn't protect, they attacked. The blows, the screams, and the images that still haunt me to this day. If it were you, could you believe that the heroes of society were the ones spreading terror instead? The courtroom sank into stunned silence. A few people shook their heads, refusing to believe. But the details I gave were too sharp, too vivid for anyone to deny. I remembered every sound, every tiny movement. Have you ever seen something so seared into your memory that even when you close your eyes, it still echoes? The police attorney jumped up again and again, shouting objections. He claimed I was making it all up, that a child's memory couldn't be trusted. But the panic in the eyes of those officers betrayed them. They glanced at each other, their heads bowed, sweat dripping down their foreheads. Do you really think innocent men would tremble at the words of a child? I pressed on, my voice growing firmer with every sentence. Each word was like a blade, slicing through the curtain of lies they had hidden behind for years. There was no turning back for them now. The truth was breaking free, and the entire courtroom felt like it was sitting on a powder keg. Do you want to know what evidence I revealed next that made the whole trial explode? Everyone thought I only had words. That I was just a kid, holding nothing but a shaky memory. But they were wrong. Have you ever seen an entire room of over 100 people hold their breath at the same time, just because of one small gesture? I slipped my hand into my pocket and pulled out something no one expected. An old phone, screen cracked, but inside it carried the power to destroy everything those men had built. A recording from that night. The screams, the orders being shouted, the unmistakable voices of the very officers everyone called heroes. Can you imagine, a child holding a weapon stronger than a whole army of lawyers? The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing nonstop. The police attorney shouted objections, yelling that the evidence was inadmissible. But his face had gone pale, sweat pouring down in streams. Do you think an innocent man would panic like that? The officers jumped to their feet. One slammed the table, another bit his lip until it bled. They knew the game had changed. The truth was no longer in their hands. And me, just a kid, had suddenly taken control. If it were you, would you dare to go head-to-head with people who could destroy your life, and their own stronghold? I lifted the phone high and pressed play. The recording filled the chamber, echoing off the walls, undeniable, inescapable. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Even the judge sat frozen, eyes wide, as if he couldn't believe his own ears. Have you ever witnessed a moment when one tiny piece of evidence made an entire system tremble? And right then, I understood. This fight would never be the same again. The courtroom exploded the moment the recording echoed through the speakers. Chairs scraped, people shouted, Reporters scrambled to call their editors. The chaos was so wild that guards had to rush in to restore order. Have you ever seen a trial turn into a battlefield in just a few seconds? The police attorney's face drained of all color. He stammered, This is fabricated. It can't be real." But his voice cracked, his eyes darted away, and his trembling hands betrayed him. "Tell me, does that look like the confidence of a man defending the truth?" The officers lost control. One slammed the table, another shot to his feet as if ready to bolt. The judge hammered his gavel again and again, shouting for silence. But nothing could erase the sound that had already been unleashed. Can you imagine the national heroes crumbling to dust in front of hundreds of witnesses? My mother broke down in tears. Her hands covered her face, shaking. She was terrified for my safety, yet relieved the truth was finally out. When I turned to her, I saw something new in her eyes, not just fear, but pride. If it were you, would you risk everything just so your loved one could finally lift their head high? Reporters rushed to push the story out. Within minutes, social media exploded. Hashtags about the trial shot to the top of every feed. Millions of eyes locked onto their screens, watching the undeniable truth unfold. Doesn't it give you chills to think the entire world was holding its breath, listening to the words of a child? But deep inside, I knew. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of a storm that would drag everyone into its path. After the recording ended, the room fell into a deathly silence. No whispers. No mocking stares. Every single eye was fixed on me, as if a child had just rewritten history. Can you imagine a few words being enough to bring an entire system to its knees? The judge declared a special investigation. The officers were detained on the spot, handcuffed in front of hundreds of witnesses. A scene no one thought possible, yet I was standing right there, watching it unfold. If it were you, could you believe those so-called heroes in blue would be dragged out of the very courtroom where they once sat as protectors of the law? My mother ran toward me and wrapped me in her arms. She sobbed uncontrollably, but this time, they were tears of release. I heard her whisper, "You did it. You changed everything." Tell me, was that moment worth every sleepless night, every breath of fear I endured? The media erupted. My name, my story, and the recording itself flooded the nation. Some called me a child hero. Others said I was reckless, even foolish. But no matter what they said, the truth had finally come to light. Would you choose to stay silent in the shadows, or dare to step forward and let the light expose everything? That day, I was just a child. But today, I know I've learned the greatest lesson of all. The truth always comes with a price. And only those with courage will dare to pay it. Do you have enough courage to face the truth in your own life? This is my story. The story of a child who stood against an entire system. And I promise you, what you've just heard is only the beginning. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because the next story will reveal a truth even darker than this one.